I just want to thank everybody that's coming on the call. I know we've got more coming, for joining us on our Thursdays with Terry. Terry Steiner. Coach Steiner's been the women's national coach for 18 years. When I first met him, he didn't have near as much gray hair. And so here he is. And we've been talking about training while dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we get started, I got to thank Ambit Energy and Team Global Energy for making this whole thing possible. While I'm at it, I want to remind people, I just said it, Frank Baumgartner is there to monitor questions. Down at the bottom, there's a chat box or a Q&A box. Type them in either one. If you want to confuse Frank, type them in both. He might answer your question twice. Just he's tired, though. He's tired. And hey, tonight we're very fortunate. We have Sean Bormet with us, head coach of the Michigan Wolverine Wrestling. Sean, we got a lot to talk about. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I look forward to it. I always enjoy spending a little time with my my old buddy and training partner Terry Steiner. So should be a good night.
Yeah, Coach, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, doing great. You know, we're just plugging away. You know, the quarantine, even though it seems like it's been long, I can't believe that it's like the middle of July already. I mean, there's been so much change, and you're constantly working on new things based on updates you're getting. So, you know, it's been fast, actually.
Yeah. Steiner, what do you say?
Yeah, you know, I mean, along with what Sean said, I mean, you know, it seems like I'm not doing a lot but it seems like the time is flying by, right? And here we are towards the end of July, and we're, you know, today, finally today, we started talking about some back to mat strategies and protocol, and it looks like on the 27th of July, we're gonna get back on some wrestling mats here in Colorado Springs if things don't turn south. But as of right now, that's the plan, and just really happy to have the opportunity to get back on the mat. I mean, I think, you know, during times like this, you really realize the things in your life that are important, and then spending time with those young athletes and being around them every day. It's an important piece of my life, and to have that kind of ripped away from you is, you know, it's a hard thing, you know, and a hard thing to deal with, but I think we've got through it pretty well, but we're definitely looking forward to getting back to, you know, being purposeful on that wrestling mat, and instead of dealing with everything else, you know, let's start focusing on getting ready for competition again, and you know, improving the wrestling lives of these young athletes in front of us. So.
Yeah, Sean, what are they talking about for you guys? You know, mat time, getting back on, that kind of thing. Any
Yes.
news?
Yeah, so we've gone through a pretty extensive return to sport protocol here at Michigan. You know, we've had some great, you know, our administration, our medical staff has done just an incredible job, you know, putting things together here so that our teams could start resuming like training, you know, under certain conditions. We actually, this past week, we had our first, you know, team lift. They're broken into small groups. That was on Tuesday. And then yesterday, we had our first, we were able to get on the mat and do some light training on the mat in small groups. So that was the first time I've seen the majority of our athletes since March 16th, when classes got canceled and NCAAs were canceled and we sent the guys home, you know. So it was just, like Terry said, I mean, it was just, you know, just unbelievable to get to see all these guys and see their interaction together, because they haven't seen each other, you know, since March either. So, you know, just to be back in that environment together, you know, doing what we all love to do, you know, it was a great day yesterday. I think that stretch was the longest I'd gone without being on a wrestling mat since I was 8 years old, because
Right.
not only could we go in our own facility with any athletes, with the college dead period, I can't go to a club or be in any environment where any prospects might be. So, you know, I've been working out and lifting weights and doing all these other things, but it's the longest I've gone without being on the wrestling mat since I was 8. So yesterday was like, it was a great day.
That's crazy. Now, did you have new recruits in?
No, we did not bring our incoming freshmen in yet. Our incoming freshmen, we're gonna bring those guys in closer to when it's time to move into the dorm. Right now Michigan's planning for a kind of a hybrid on-campus fall semester. So we're there's a date where these guys can start moving back into the dorms, and we'll go through another COVID protocol evaluation with them towards the end of August. But I just kind of want to do this in stages and get our returning guys back because it's a smaller group, get that under control, and then we'll bring in the incoming freshmen.
Gotcha, because I know Coach Bumgardner here has a close connection with one of your new recruits. Coach, you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, so here we've got our conference in our area is pretty talent rich, and one of the guys that's in our regional and we see almost through our entire state series is Joe Walker.
Oh yeah. Joe, I really enjoy watching Joe, and I've enjoyed recruiting him. I mean, he's just got a great personality. He loves to train, and he is explosive. I mean, I really see a lot of potential in him for this college level.
You should. Yeah, he's been up in our room in the off-season training with our guys too, and phenomenal human being, phenomenal kid.
Yeah.
And you get your hands on him, and you're like, man, this kid's hard to move. So we're excited for him.
Yeah, one of the things I like about Joe and his family is, I mean, from day one, he's been in love with Michigan. I mean, he's even once he committed. I mean, him and his family were up at the majority of our home matches last year. They would, even if it was just like a day trip, they'd drive up, be at a dual meet, say hello after, head home. I mean, I can tell it's just an all-in family.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Fantastic. That's exciting. Well, so you got them back in the room so what does Michigan wrestling look like since this COVID-19? No, you haven't seen them, so it doesn't look like a whole lot, but I mean, tell us your transition, communication. You Zoom with the guys, you talk to them, what's going on?
Yeah, we did a little bit of both. We, kind of went in stages. When they first went home, we, honestly, I think, we were a little naive. I didn't think they'd go home and it would last this long, to be honest. I mean, once I started to pay attention a little more to some of the science and how serious, how contagious this virus was, I started to, realize it was going to be longer than I thought initially. But, so we started out just, we were still finishing school. So we were trying to make sure the guys were, adapting and making the transition to online smoothly, because Michigan has never had any online class offering. So not only was it a big transition for our faculty here, but it was a big transition for our student athletes. So, we did a lot of individual calling, broke up the roster, would make calls each week to guys on the team. Then we started transitioning to some Zoom meetings with them, and, and then it just turned into a lot more communication, just group messaging with the guys, calls. We would drop off and do, a Zoom meeting probably once or twice a month, because those seem to lose their excitement with the guys too after a while. But they were doing a lot of that with school, So then we spent some time. We went through a phase. Once we knew they were going to start coming back, we kind of redesigned some of our video analysis system. And we communicated that to our guys individually, gave them some work to do. We tried to simplify it, gave them areas to break down, just kind of worked with them to study their own matches and break down some things on paper, so that as we started to get this return to the mat, we'd, have a little better handle on developing individual plans for them. I mean, we're watching the film all the time too, but getting them to learn the process and understand how to do it was what we really wanted to accomplish out of it.
So we have high school wrestlers, high school coaches, we have all different kinds of people on the webinars, whether they're on today or they look back at them. Could you kind of walk through that for us? What do you say to them? How are you going to break this down? I mean, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a lead leg? Are you looking for heavy hands? Tell us the process so we can pass that information on so people can do it themselves.
Yeah, I've had really since I was training you know, as an athlete, and Terry probably the same way. We had the same, you know, same U.S. national team coach, Bruce Burnett. And I think Bruce was just a tremendous organizer, and he kept things simple. And I thought he did an unbelievable job just breaking down film. And I learned a lot from him. You know, and I kept a lot of that with me throughout my competitive career and also when I was coaching. And I also, you know, adapted and did some things for freestyle. And when I came back to coaching at the college level, you know, broke down things for a folk style again, and just kind of really tried to simplify it, because you can get it and it can be overly complicated and get guys thinking in too many different directions, you know.
Right.
So we tried to simplify it, and basically we were looking at, you know, the attack, you know, how many attacks they're getting off, you know, leg attacks, what their finishing rate is, you know, and then they would note, you know, if they got stuck in a position, they would note that. So we'd go over a position, specific position with them. But really, you know, how many times they get in the legs, and when they're getting there, how many times are they finishing? You know, how many times do their opponents get to the legs? How many times is the opponent finishing? Or how many times are we scoring off the opponent's attack? Then we would break down, and we'd keep it really simple like that in the feet, because everyone's got different setups, you know, different shots they go to, different ways they score. And then we started to break down top position a little bit. You know, basically, are they getting riding time? You know, are they, you know, how many turns are they getting per match or attempts? And then the other thing we're really tracking is returns. You know, mat returns. The guy gets to his feet 5 times. Are we getting 5 mat returns? Are we getting no mat returns? You know, because that's also going to be an indicator on if you got riding time, probably. You know,
Sure.
you know, on the flip side, you know, on the bottom, you know, just, you know, are we winning off the whistle? How many times are we getting to our feet? Are we getting mat returned? You know, are we getting more reversals or more escapes? And then just basically a little bit of analysis on how we're dealing with legs. You know, what's our success rate when legs come in? Because I think that's just that can be a real problem area when guys get to the college level, you know. And so that's really, we kept it pretty simple. Just those basically 10 areas for folk style, you know.
Do you concentrate on, you know, your end of the year opponents, your conference opponents, your, you know, who you take a past national champ and you walk through the top 8 that are returning? I mean, what are you thinking about that? I'm coming to you next, Terry.
You talking to me or Terry?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, but I'll go to Terry right after this.
Okay.
I didn't want him to fall asleep on me.
Yeah, so in terms of our, you know, as our staff is studying film, we're always studying film on upcoming opponents. I think some guys, you know, you got to know your athletes. Some guys, you know, they really do well when they study their opponent. Some guys, it's better maybe they don't study their opponent. You know, we try to do more of that. We know our guys' personalities and how what they do better working with as far as information, or less information, more information. But you know, we're looking at opponents that are upcoming. When we did this, you know, video analysis with our guys recently, we kind of went backwards, you know, from the guys that were competing. Big Tens was our last competition. So they broke down their Big Ten matches, then worked backwards, you know, the following week, and did their matches from February, then their matches from January, you know, so we can start to see some patterns. You know, it helps us plan their individual minutes a little more.
Right. Terry, when you're breaking down video, are you looking at medalists? Are you looking at, you know, Pan American championships? You know, what are you doing? I know you qualify out of the.
Well, I think first, you know, when we're looking at our individual athletes and let's say our world team members or our national team members, I mean, we're breaking it way down. You know, we're looking at the attack rate, like Sean was saying, the attack rate. We're going to look at how many points are we scoring the first minute, second minute, third minute, fourth minute, fifth, sixth minute. You know, we want to know how, on average, you know, where our points are being scored. And all of a sudden, if we see that, you know, we're really not scoring anything, we're scoring in the third minute of a match is where most of our points are scored. You know, we're gonna focus on, you know, picking up the pace of the match early in the match, right? Maybe it's we drop off and we're not scoring anything at the end of the match. Maybe that's a conditioning issue, right? Or something like that. But we're looking at that. We're looking at the, you know, the parterre ratio. How much are we scoring in parterre compared to if we take someone down 5 times, are we scoring 5 times in parterre? Or are we only scoring once? right? Is parterre an issue for us? You know, we're looking at our percentages of, you know, if someone gets in on our legs, how many times are we stopping them successfully, or how many times are they scoring on that? I mean, so we really, when we're looking at our individual athletes, we break it way down. You know, we try to get to the bottom of them, but that's usually like right after a world championships at the beginning of the year, where we have time to break that athlete down and build them back up, right? And then we have the year, or at least a few months, to really focus on the details and build them back up and correct the things that need to be corrected and work on those things. When we're looking at our opponents, it's a little bit different. And I think it's really an individual thing. If you throw too much information at one athlete, they're gonna start focusing so much on their opponents that they forget about themselves, right? And the other athlete wants to know more and more. But in general, I think when we're looking at our opponents, we're looking at tendencies. We're looking at their lead leg, their dominant ties, you know, their dominant attacks on their feet and in parterre, you know, maybe some areas of weakness that we can try to, you know, really bring to the front of the matches and take advantage of. But, you know, it really depends on, but it's an important piece, you know, and I think you can definitely do too much of it, and where athletes really lose focus of themselves. And I think, you know, even as coaches, you know, it still comes down to what are our athletes most effective at, right? And where are their points going to come from? We don't want to have to score 20 points to win a match, right? We want to be able to shut people down and do those things. So, you know, I mean, when we're working things as a team, we focus mostly on defense. That's something that everyone can work on, and everyone probably needs to work on. And when we're focusing on our individual athletes, a lot of times it is our offenses, right? And our team drills are more defensive based, and our individual drills are more, you know, just geared to that individual, but it tends to be more offensive based because everyone has little different ways that and different body styles and what they're really what's going to work for them. So I really, you know, that's where you really have to know the athlete and get to know them, and they have to get to know themselves. It's amazing to me how many athletes, and this happened actually when I was still, when Sean and I were coaches at the University of Wisconsin in the mid to late 90s. You know, one of the things that I spent a lot of time on in the summer was the cadet team, the cadet national team that was going to cadet nationals in Fargo. And it really amazed me how when you'd ask a cadet kid what their favorite moves are, favorite attacks, they couldn't tell you, you know, where their points came from. They never thought about it. And, you know, they just kind of went out there and wrestled. And so, you know, I think it's helping people understand where their strengths are too. That's you know, they need to know that we can't always just break people down and work on their lesser strengths. We have to work on the things that are the bread and butter of their wrestling as well.
Do you think it's important, Terry, that when you have a country such as Japan, who is absolutely dominant in their realm, women's wrestling, to watch them and find out tendencies that everybody seems to do and then attack that?
Well, when you're working on a country like Japan, they're very similar, right? Their athletes are similar, all of them. They all have the same general makeup, and so yeah, you can definitely attack tendencies, you know, that they have, and look at, you know, the attack rate that they have compared to other countries and things, you know, even, you know that if you're wrestling someone from Japan, and I'm going to just throw this out, but, you know, you probably need to be scoring more than 2.5 points per minute, because they have a tendency to score that much each minute of the match. So you're going to have to score more than that, or else you're going to have to shut them down. And, but, you know, I think it's also a danger, right, of trying to be too much like someone else, right? Because no matter, you know, and I just look at my own career. I mean, I can try all I want to be like someone else, and you know, have someone out there that was a role model of mine or someone I emulated to be like. But bottom line is, I probably bring different attributes than that person. And if we try too much to be like the country of Japan, that's a sure way to fail, because we probably don't have the same attributes as they do. We probably don't bring the same characteristics, you know, just physical characteristics that they do to the mat. And so I think it's a delicate balance there on when you're building that model of what an athlete should look like or what a champion should look like. You better look at your own athletes, and what their skills and attributes that they bring to the table. Because you try to be too much like someone else, you know, you're probably missing the mark a little bit.
Well, I don't think wrestling like someone else, but if they all seem to have a tendency to score in the last 30 seconds of every period.
Yeah, you may definitely watch things and say, you know, you better make sure that the last 45 seconds of a period or 45 seconds of a match, you better be ready, because they're coming. You know, that's where they're scoring their points. But that's what we can break down on film, right? We can break that down and look at that and know that going in, that they're scoring a lot of their points within the first minute of the match. They're starting fast and scoring early, and you have to be ready when you step on the mat. If you don't know those things as a coach, I guess, going into a major competition, you really haven't done your job, because all the video is there, right?
Right.
There's no hidden secrets anymore, right? I mean, everything's right in front of you. So if you don't know those things, you should never step on a competition mat not knowing your opponent. It just shouldn't happen this day and age.
So Sean, 3 openings starting, workouts are beginning. What are you thinking as far as phases go? You know, how are you looking at getting it in and starting building back up?
Yeah, I mean, the first day we were just assessing a little bit. Everyone's had a different situation back where they were at home, whether they could get on mats pretty frequently or for a while they couldn't. So everyone's had different minutes in the weight room and on the mats. Most of our guys had a pretty good situation. But early on, right when this, the quarantines kind of hit, we wanted to make sure that, we had to make sure our guys understood that there were no competitions coming, and take some of the anxiety away. Because in our sport, we just constantly feel like if we're not training full tilt, that we're falling behind, or we're not going to be ready for something. And, there's a certain point where we all realize, like, there's nothing to get ready for. All the spring competitions were canceled. The Olympics was moved. There's nothing on the schedule. So, once we got back, we basically, as a staff, we met a few times, just talked about some of the things from individual areas, team areas. And, we're basically going to just approach this as a huge learning phase, just to really hone on skills, improve on skills that they're already good at, work on a lot of areas individually and as a team, that we can improve on, expand, work on more, situations. So we're capitalizing on more bonus points, in folk style right now. If you want to win team championships, you're going to have to score some bonus points. I mean, you just start tracking the last decade, and, the teams that are, on the podium or teams that are winning it, there's a range of 17 to 23 bonus points being scored at the championship. So, you got to be able to put those points on the board. And it's an exciting style of wrestling to watch. So, we got guys, we got a tremendous group right now, good mix of veterans and some really good, talented young guys that have been working hard. And they're excited about, wrestling that kind of style and putting a lot of points on the board. So we're just looking at a huge just learning phase right now, getting them back this summer, until we get a little more clarity on what the college season is going to look like. Then we'll start addressing what our preseason may look like. Because right now it's, there's a little uncertainty on, if we're going to have a full season or a shortened season.
Sure. And do you have anybody that took a Olympic red shirt?
Last season we had 3 athletes take an Olympic red shirt.
So how's that going to affect the makeup of your team? Are they going to be allowed to take a second Olympic red shirt? Are they going to be stuck? Have they set a date yet? Do you guys know? I thought I heard it was. Pardon me?
For
For
the
the Olympics.
trials.
For the trials and then the Olympics. Yeah.
Well, the trials tentatively are like the second week in April, right? I mean,
Okay.
10th, somewhere in there. And then the Olympics are, just 1 year later. I think the 23rd of July is 23rd or 25th. I can't remember exactly, but one of those days is the start date for the Olympic Games. So, those are all tentative. Everything's so fluid right now, right? I mean, we just don't know what's really happening here, and we're just trying to get through it. But those are the kind of things that that we know are coming forward, and they're there for us. But other than that, there's not a lot of things set in stone, right? We don't know when we can have camps again, from a national team standpoint. We don't know where we're going to have camps. They've already informed us that it's probably not going to be at the Olympic Training Center. It's probably going to be at outside locations. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty.
But has the NCAA, Sean, indicated anything about Olympic red shirt and the possibility of giving them a second one or anything like that? Any indication?
I haven't seen anything that's certain. There's been no confirmation. I think, up to this point, it feels like there's so many challenges and the situation's still so fluid that they've been focusing on figuring out how to approach the fall sports. And I think they're going to quickly start to approach winter sports, once they determine that. But, I think everything's on the table right now. I don't see, theoretically, with the Olympics being moved, I would think that the same criteria would apply again for this next year. Mm-hmm. And the guys that qualify for an Olympic red shirt qualify for an Olympic red shirt. I mean, I don't see any reason the application would be any different. The circumstances are unprecedented. Right. And I think all of us coaches, I would say everything's on the table. I mean, we're hoping for the best, but we're also planning to figure out how we can protect our guys' eligibilities. The last thing we want to do is lead them down a path to lose, another NCAA tournament. So, I'd say everything's on the table in terms of what we're looking at. I mean, right now we're just focused on week by week and excited to be with our guys and improving and being together and training. But as a staff, we're looking at all these different models and scenarios of all the what ifs,
Yeah. And
so Sean, let me ask you something. So I'm having a lot of conversations with our coaches at our high school, different sports, things like that. And one of the things that I've been trying to relay is we have to be in a mode as coaches to save our sport. Basically, don't do anything dumb that's going to bring any more negative attention to what the virus could be contagious, things like that. Are athletics even a good idea? So from your perspective, are you guys doing anything, I'm going to go ahead and say very cautiously on top of what the university is already asking of you, or are you just following what the guidelines that they go ahead and put in place?
No, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations here, and I think they've put some tremendous guidelines in. Everything's built around, the health and safety of our guys and being able to do this in a safe way. We've had, before we started, we've had testing. We have increased sanitation of the facilities. There's mandates here in Michigan, in our state, and on campus, and in our facilities. For wearing masks around other athletes and other buildings. Basically whenever, the only time they're not wearing them is when they're actually on the mat training. And, so the real risk is outside our facility. So that's been a lot of the conversation. When they're not in our facility training, they basically got to minimize, chances for exposure, being out in the public, So they got to be really mindful. We've talked a lot about that. You know, our guys are committed, you know, in terms of they want to be able to train, they want to be able to compete. So I think they're doing everything they can, their power, you know, like, you know, they get together, you know, have you know, food together, but it's pretty tight knit, you know, with our group. You know, they pretty much know we do temperature checks. If they're not feeling well, you know, we've talked about, like, if something happens, guy's not feeling well, like, now's not a time to try to push through that and get into the practice room, you know. And that's across the board with all the athletics here. We designed our groups pretty intentionally. You know, we split up our groups more so obviously to a degree by weight, but also by roommates, you know. So we're, you know, keeping more roommates together, and we're trying to eliminate, you know, cross contamination of our groups. So, you know, we did plan just about everything we possibly could that's in our control to make sure that, you know, that the guys are in there and they're healthy. But, you know, I think it's like anything, you know, right now, it's the stuff outside the facility that I think where most of the risk is, you know. If you know, and across the board with all sports, you know, my daughter plays field hockey in high school at a club level, and she's just in the middle of her recruiting process for field hockey. So, you know, I've had the luxury of kind of listening and watching closely everything they're doing at the USA level and field hockey, the club level, and even right now collegiately. You know, so, you know, at least in the Big Ten Conference, which I'm very familiar, you know, I think there's a lot of conversations within our conference across the board. And I think everybody's trying to do the right thing and you know, and also give these athletes an opportunity to train and have a season.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Terry, I know that you guys had a discussion just today, right? On your return to protocol.
Yeah.
Want to touch on any of that?
You know, it's really the same as what Sean was talking about, right? I mean, we're going to have to, you know, the athletes, number one, they're going to have a COVID negative COVID test this next week before we come into practice on the 27th. So that's going to be the first thing. They're going to have to sign a contract with the organization, with USA Wrestling, that they're going to live their lives in a certain way that is going to protect both themselves, the society, and their teammates, and live their lives in a certain way. And they're going to have to be committed to that, and not just the athletes, the coaches and support staff as well, right? If we're going to do this, we don't have a second chance, right? We've got to do it right. And then, you know, being a part of the national staff, we feel like we're you know, we have some leadership on our shoulders, right? And so we have to show that if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, and it can be done, and we can get through this. And then so, you know, and then every day when we come into practice, you know, there's going to be, you know, you're going to have to get temperature checked, and they're going to have to, you know, fill out a form on, you know, if they're feeling any kind of illness or fever or anything like that. And we have to be real honest and open and prevent with it, because if you're trying to sneak around and all of a sudden we get, you know, a couple people infected, and all of a sudden we're shutting everything back down, right? And we're not moving forward as a program, but more than that, we're not moving forward as an organization and a sport. And so really, it's not just thinking about the athletes in front of us, it's thinking about the entire sport and what's at stake, right? I mean, we have a lot at stake. We have, you know, whether it's at the college level, we have NCAA championships. If it's at the international level, we have an Olympic Games and things like that. So there's a lot at stake that we have to be mindful of, and we can't just think that we're not a part of it. Right? And I think it's just helping the athletes understand the value in doing the right thing, and that's the only way we're going to get through this. And we're all in this together, right? And so that was really the nature of our talk this afternoon or this morning. And you know, it's just, you know, following through and making everyone accountable to it.
Okay, so you're a high school coach, and you don't have the luxury of the USOC or a Big Ten program like Michigan. And so what's the bare minimum? How should they start? Do they mandate that everybody get at least their temperature taken before they walk in there? I mean, they had to have told you.
I think so.
at the
Yeah, I
beginning?
think so. I mean, I think that at a bare minimum, and that you know they're living a lifestyle that is very somewhat sequestered, I would say. You know, where you're kind of staying out of harm's way as much as you can, and you're not getting in big groups, you're not attending parties and this and that, where there's a lot of people around. I mean, you know, if you're not serious about it, then you know, if our athletes aren't going to keep each other accountable and they're not going to do that, then you know they're just going to be asked to lead practice and not be a part of it, right? And they can go on their own way. And but if they're going to do it, and if this is important to them, then we have to do things in a certain way. And I think it goes the same for a high school program or anything else. Everyone's going to have to toe the line, right? And if it doesn't happen, it just we're going to be in this for a long time until, or at least until there's a vaccine.
What about, I don't want to be controversial. I don't want to start anything, but what about these tournaments that are going on right now where you're getting, you know, 500,000 kids wrestling already?
Well, I mean, bottom line is, you know, if things are opened up in their areas, right, and the CDC guidelines, if they're, paying attention to the CDC guidelines in their areas, and they're, you know, they're traveling to those locations, and you know, things are going to start up at a local level. There's no doubt, right, and it's not going to be an international level tournament that how we're going to open up. It's going to be more at a local level than a regional level than a national level, is where they just told us from the beginning how things are going to open up, and it may look a lot different in the state of North Dakota than it does in California or Arizona, right? And you know, for someone to have a competition in some locations right now, maybe it does make sense, and maybe it gets people back to what they're doing and they can stay safe doing it. And in other places, it's not going to be like that. So you know, I think it's just part of this process of trying to figure it out, right? So.
Okay. Well, we were talking earlier about knowing your athlete and breaking down video. And is it just your personal relationship, knowing the athlete well enough, that makes you decide whether you should talk more or talk less? Introduce them to their opponent more, or introduce them less? Tell us how you figure that out.
For me, it's just asking questions, right? I mean, you start asking questions. I mean, you know, when you start breaking down film, and you can see it too, right? You can see it in people's body language as you're watching film or this or that, and you know, if they're nervous, if they're asking a lot of questions, you can start to get a sense of what they're comfortable with, right? But it's okay to just ask, you know, how comfortable are you watching your opponent? How comfortable are you me telling you that, you know, this person has a great single leg? We need to be aware of it. All of a sudden, they get eyes that are this big, and all of a sudden, I never said their single leg was unstoppable. You know, I just said that this is their tendency, right? And helping them understand that the more information we have, the better it is for us. Right? And it's like going into a test, right? You go into a math test and you haven't prepared, good luck, right? And the more information you have, the more you've studied that problem, the better off you are, hopefully. And it's helping athletes understand that you know, just because we're talking about someone and showing their tendencies, you know, it's not to highlight them, it's to break them down so we know how to attack them better. And so, but that's a process, and not everyone is comfortable with that. And it's finding the level of comfortness, and hopefully through time, you can get them to a point to understand that, yeah, he doesn't mean anything by when he says, hey, watch that high crotch, they're coming with a high crotch. You're just making them aware, right? And so, but there's been times, and I talked about it today on a different program, where, you know, I thought that we cost our athlete maybe a world championship because of that. Because I thought one of the coaches gave way too much information, and this athlete was not ready to receive that information. And they went out there and they were so focused on their opponent and not themselves. And they never wrestled how they could have. And I thought it cost us a world championship. No, I think she ended up taking third, but she never got that gold medal. And I blame myself to this day that didn't happen. It didn't go through the right way, because I think we were the best person at that competition. I think we scared her a little bit with too much information. Right.
Sean?
It is knowing your athlete, right?
Yeah, it's definitely knowing your athlete and the connection you have with them, and I've had an interesting coaching career, because I've actually I've coached at all the levels, from youth all the way up to senior level, Olympic level, and it's really knowing your athletes, be able to read them and asking them questions. Doesn't matter the age. I mean, you can ask them, like, are you comfortable? What do you want to know? How much do you want to know? Kids will tell you. Does knowing, being aware, knowing some of the strength of your opponent, does that make you nervous? They'll tell you. But you start to develop a relationship with the younger kids. You can see the look on their face. You can tell when they're nervous, when they're not. What helps them, what doesn't help them. Because having good awareness, it's a fine line between being aware of an opponent's tendencies or strengths, and and making sure you're not causing some sort of a paralysis out there, that they're waiting for this attack to come and then they're a step behind the action. That's typically what can backfire. But it just really boils down to just really knowing your athletes and asking the right questions and finding that balance. And sometimes you find out the hard way, and then you make a note. You don't tell them too much the next time. Like in the 90s, if I knew I was working out with Terry Steiner,
Good.
back in the Wisconsin wrestling room at 3:30, if I knew Terry and I had a workout lined up that day, at lunch I would start telling him how almost no one finishes a high crotch on my right leg. I would start planting the seeds at lunch. By 3:30, he'd be shooting that high crotch on my right leg. I'd be scoring like crazy. It'd be the only time I would hear Terry Steiner swear. I mean, it was like clockwork.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got to know your athletes and know your opponents.
I love it. Hey, before we get into the questions and answers, well, questions and hopefully answers, Terry, I want to talk about the program, our sponsors.
Yeah, so just real quickly, this program is brought to you by Ambit Energy. Ambit Energy is a national sponsor of USA Wrestling and a partner with us. And how this works is you can become a part of Ambit Energy in different ways. You can become a consultant and get out there and be a part of this. And make some money doing it, and make some money for your local charities or local groups and organizations, or you can simply be a customer. And what Ambit Energy is it's a energy supply company, right? And so let's say you pay your bill, and I don't know, everyone's from different locations, but let's say you're from the city of Chicago. I think it's Con Edison, who is their utility company there, and with ComEd you'll still get your bill from them, but the supply of the energy will come from Ambit Energy. And so when you get your next bill from ComEd, they will you'll still pay them, you'll still get charged by them, you'll still pay them the delivery charges and the taxes, but the supply portion of the bill will come from Ambit Energy, and ComEd will pay Ambit Energy that portion of the bill, but you'll save a percentage of, some percentage points on your bill. So every bill that comes in, from everyone, a portion of those proceeds go back to USA Wrestling and the national team and things like that. So we'd love your help. It's the one thing that is constant, right? We're always looking for new revenue streams. to fund and feed our national teams. And that's the one thing that's different for some of you that maybe don't know. It's one thing that's different with our national organization or our National Olympic Committee and most Olympic committees is, our Olympic Committee is not government funded. Right? And most are. If you go to China or Russia or those kind of countries, those Olympic committees have government appropriated funds to sponsor their Olympic teams and their Olympic national governing bodies, and we don't have that in the U.S. So we're out there looking for ways, and Ambit Energy has provided another revenue stream for us, and we'd love you all to take a look at it. Frank will put it in the chat box how you can get a better look at that if you're interested in helping out, and we'd love to talk to you more about it if you are interested. So.
Perfect. Frank, questions? I see we've got a couple good ones here.
Yeah, we really do. And I'm just going to kind of tag on to what Terry was saying. This webinar series, week 12, 13, whatever it is now, it was brought to you through that partnership. And I sent out an email a couple days ago about, hey, who do you guys want on? We got a lot of great responses, and we're reaching out to those individuals to try and bring those on as guest speakers. But, we need your support to continue this webinar series as well as other activities. Okay, so please, make sure you visit that website we just put there in the chat to learn a little bit more and to schedule a call with one of us and maybe learn even more detail about how it could help you in your programs or your organizations or whatever. So, Sean, earlier, go ahead, Alex.
I'm really excited. We're going to have Kerry McCoy on next week. I tell you, one of the classiest guys in wrestling. I love him. Been a fan of his for an awful long time. Kerry's coming on next week, so I hope that you phone a friend, bring them in. All right, so go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, so Sean, earlier you were talking about breaking down a lot of film here during this COVID period, and you said you had 10 points that you were really tracking and getting a lot of data from. So one of the questions, and I think Laura asked the question, what's the best way to track this data? Do you have some sort of program like Huddle? Are you using Google Sheets? Do you have some outside source? I guess, how are you tracking all this data?
Yeah, so we've done it a couple different ways. We've used Huddle. We've used MapBoss more recently. We actually have a supporter here that actually built a system. It was probably one of the best systems I've ever used, and we were just kind of using it as a sample here at Michigan. It really broke down a lot of information. Our staff would use it primarily, but he would actually, it was a little time consuming. He would score matches as they were happening, but it was a lot more in depth. There were a lot more in depth parts that we helped him design. Specific to some of the stats we were looking for, even like attacks to the left, attacks to the right. You'd hit the button and it would break down like the pie charts and show you exactly opponents, total season, really sophisticated. And I really liked that system, but it was very time consuming. And I think if we were in position to have a couple student managers who could consistently watch and score it the same way, because you got to have somebody that can do it and know the sport and really, be plugging in the right variables when they're watching it live or going back and watching it. But that was a great system for us. What we've done this summer is we just try to simplify, and we actually just made up some worksheets, just like a Google Doc worksheet, individually. You break down your match, and mostly, we wanted our guys to do it because you got to look at the numbers. I mean, a guy could think he's pretty efficient with his mat returns, but if he only gets one mat return out of 5, and he sees that on paper, 1 out of 5, like it's very clear that he wasn't efficient with his mat returns in that match, and probably why he didn't get riding time, and and it made a difference in the match. Maybe the other guy got riding time, so we tried to just kind of simplify it, and there's stats, just writing them out, on a Google sheet. But that's really what we've done this spring, summer, because we wanted to simplify and put it on our athletes more than the coaches. But there's a lot of different softwares out there. It just depends on, you know, it's got to be simple enough from a time standpoint that you can do it consistently, you know. And I think that depends on what kind of staffing you have.
So the program that you were using there, is that something that's going to be on the market soon, or is that a Michigan trade secret there?
You know, that's a great question. That's a great question. That the gentleman that built it, he built it from scratch. You know, just he's really a computer whiz, and he built it from scratch. And I know he had a couple conversations. This is a couple of years ago. He had a couple conversations with a couple different teams. I think just trying to sample it a little bit more and fine tune it. But I'm not sure if it'll go out to the market yet or not. I gotta have a conversation with him about it, because I would like to go back into using that. I would like to go back into using that system with him this upcoming year.
Nice. That's fantastic. Well, if so, you know, make sure and let high school coach right now currently know,
Yeah.
and we'll be sure to pilot that then for you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Awesome.
You know
So
what?
next question.
Before you go, also, Sean, if there's something that you want to promote on here, if there's something, you know, obviously camps would be a hot commodity if you were ever allowed to have a camp. Okay. But there's something, you know, we had Tom Ryan on, and so we were promoting his book. You know, we got Mean Gene, the pinning machine, you know, we promote his website. If there's something, please let us know. We'll put it right here in the chat box. It'll be up there for anybody that comes on. So, you know, you don't have a Dan Gable product line, right, that you're pushing or anything.
No, no.
Okay, so just keep that in mind as we go through. Sorry, Frank. Take it away, brother.
Yeah, you know how we were talking earlier about, you know, Terry's the one that's got to stay on task? No, not at all, Alex.
I've been fishing all week, man. I'm sunburned.
All right, so Kevin had a question. What's the best way to mentally prepare for a match, especially if someone is nervy or jittery? Any suggestions?
I think you got to focus on the facts, right? I mean, I think when that happens, the kid is probably focusing too much on results, right? They're starting to focus on what happens if I don't win, what happens if this, what happens if that, and they're not focusing on the process of winning, right? And so you got to get back to the process of winning and focus on the facts of the match. You know that, hey, I know I have a great single leg, and I know I can score it on anyone, right? I know that my opponent is coming to me with a double leg. I know I need to circle to the left or whatever that is, right? I mean, you got to get back to the focus of the match, the process of winning, and let's focus our attention there and our energies there. And I think in doing so, there'll be a calmness. Right? You'll bring a calmness to them instead of all these voices. At the end of the day, you know, that little voice in your head is always talking, right? That's always going to be bringing up the what if this, what if that, and this kind of dialogue. And I think you also have to kind of make a pact with yourself that, you know, with this little voice that you can talk all the way you want, but when that whistle blows, it's my time to do my job, right? And nerves are a part of performance. And anytime you're performing in life and on the wrestling mat, whatever, there's going to be some nerves and some jitters. That's a very natural thing. And helping athletes understand that. I know as a young athlete, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me that felt like this and had these butterflies in my stomach and you know, had this little voice talking to me. And you realize that that's very natural. That's a common thing. If you're a person that is performing, and it means something to you. That's just natural. Right? And so I think it's just helping them break it down and understand that and moving forward from there. So,
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of the same sentiments as Terry. I mean, I think it's, you know, that even with some of the youth kids, you know, through the college level and the senior level, I mean, it's, you know, you learn to manage that stuff earlier in the sport to a degree, and then the stakes keep going up. But, you know, that little bit of nervousness. I think, kids need to understand that, that's part of it. That's okay. You need some of those nerves to start producing some of those chemicals your body needs to get out there and wrestle hard, and that a lot of the perspective, I try to talk a lot about is just the excitement to compete, just how much they love and the love you got to have to really be out there competing, and not get too hung up in the result. I mean, we all want to win. And we all want our athletes to win, but really just getting them excited and really getting in tune with, the love to really be out there competing and the nerves, and at the higher levels, you hear the word pressure sometimes, and the nerves and the pressure, depending on how you look at that, at that highest level. I mean, it's a privilege to have that, and how much it's really in tune with being able to compete at the highest level and love it, and focus on the process of scoring, focus on the process of your preparation and the attention to details in your preparation. I think that takes care of, it takes care of a lot of that, especially as you get into the older levels of wrestling. But, I found that a lot with the younger kids, and, it's hard to tell sometimes where the nerves would come from, because then there's a lot more involvement with, parents and teammates, and you got to start to really examine, where some of that might come from. Is it more internal or more external? And then start to figure out a solution for it.
Awesome. So speaking of the younger kids, I know that you, before you were at Michigan, you had your overtime club there in Illinois, and I actually had some of my some guys that I wrestled with that attended there, and in knowing that you've worked with that age level, I had a question, which was so the individual that asked the question has a drilling system in place that they think is pretty good, but their live wrestling, it's not translating so well. So what are some tactics to get the drilling that they have that's taking place that they believe is really good to translate better to live wrestling?
I mean, I think the environment you create for live wrestling, especially at the younger level, is important. I think they need to have a environment that's very conducive to trying to score and trying to do things on the mat where it's also okay if they make mistakes or they don't get the score. Like setting that environment to focus on the effort of what you're doing and trying to do the things that you've been drilling. Like that's got to be in place. And then I think explaining, because at the younger stages, I'm not sure what exact age he's referencing, youth or, like junior high or high school, but, in those stages, I think it's important to explain and have a conversation so that they understand the value of live wrestling in practice. And that, in live wrestling is where you learn to fight for points or fight to not give up points. You don't learn how to fight drilling or play wrestling. You can learn a lot about positions and timing and chain wrestling through those things, but you really learn how to fight for points when the other guy's resisting in live wrestling only. And that's an important thing for them to understand. But again, it's got to be the right kind of environment where, they're encouraged to just really get after it and score points. And if they make mistakes, it's okay. And, they just got to continue to wrestle hard. And, if they get in a bad situation, wrestle out of it. And sometimes I would also just show them older level, like higher level wrestling, college, international, and I'd show them live wrestling and what it really looked like at that level. Because I think the more they can see that and visualize it, the easier it gets for them to do it in the practice room. But, that environment, just making sure they understand that, the fighting for the points, you really only learn how to do that well in live wrestling. You can't do it. You can't learn that in drilling,
Yeah, I think that so many times we focus on the technical aspect, right? And that's a part of it, right? We need to know good positioning and good technique and tactics and things like that. But the fight, the learning how to compete, right? You can have a perfect single leg and it's never going to score, right? If you don't have the right purpose and intensity behind it and the right fight behind it and the right, just that tenacity behind it. I mean, you that has to come with it. The greatest technique in the world isn't going to work if there's no fight there, right? And so, and the other way around, you can have all the fight in the world, and if you don't have good technique, it might not work either, right? And so it is a combination of that, and it's And it's understanding that and helping kids understand that, and then helping them understand also that you know, you may have a great, again, back to a single leg, you may have a great single leg, but it doesn't mean it's going to score 10 times out of 10. And that's not what's important, right? What's important is, you know, maybe you score 3 out of 10 or 5 out of 10. What about the other 5 times? Is your opponent scoring on you, or are you able to wrestle your way out of that back to a position where you can defend yourself and attack again? I mean, you know, you look at like baseball, you know, they're superstars if they're batting 300, right? And you know, that means that 7 times up to bat, they're striking out or it's not happening for them, right? And so it's the same thing with the sport of wrestling. I mean, I think it's kind of helping them understand of what is successful, and then reframing success too, and not thinking that every time I shoot that single leg and I don't score, that, you know, it was a failure. No, now you have a chance to work on the next part of it. And that's recovering back to your feet to safe position, which also has to be learned, right? And so yeah, I think you have to look at that too, right? I mean, because that's going to be just as important to win those tough matches, is not just the points you score, but the points you don't give up.
Right. Right.
Perfect. Well, boys, let me take this opportunity to, Frank, do you have anything else to add before we wrap this baby up?
That's all I got.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much, Terry. As always, it's fun. Thank you, Sean, for picking on Terry just a little enough that we got to laugh a little. You know, you're always welcome to come back, even if you know, and if you come back just to pick on Terry, you know, you get a jar later. No, Sean, thanks a ton for coming on, taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're getting back to it and ready. So, but you've had plenty of time to prepare, right?
Plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time. So,
Yeah.
for those of you that are on the Zoom call tonight, the webinar, thank you so much for being part of our night. Frank, great job. You guys have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, guys. Hey, thanks, Terry.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex, Frank.